Hello everybody, hope you're having a wonderful day, and today we're going to be talking about another brass instrument, and that is the French horn. Yes, the horn, as it is called at times. This, as I said, is part of the brass family. It's part of the brass section in the orchestra. The orchestra usually has anywhere from 2 to 8 French horns in it, and this plays in the alto range in general. Now, before we get any further into the instrument itself, and start talking about its range, what its tone is, what its position in the orchestra, what its role is, all that stuff. Let's first break down its anatomy. So as you can see, this is going to get quite complex, quite fast, but let's break it down slowly. So we start up top here with this piece. This is called a mouthpiece. As you can see, it's detachable. You can place it in the holster here. Now this is the mouthpiece. Now when you play a brass instrument, you make a sound by buzzing your lips like this. That may not sound very attractive at first, but you do that while the mouthpiece is over your mouth, and that sound resonates inside the mouthpiece. So let's see what that sounds like with the mouthpiece now. Already much better. And when you allow that to resonate inside the entire French horn, you can get a sound that sounds like this. So it's the same sound I'm making, but now I'm allowing it to go through the mouthpiece throughout the entire French horn. Regardless, the mouthpiece basically when you play your mouth and you buzz your lips. Okay, let's move further down. Then we have a bunch of piping here, lots of plumbing. I don't really want to go through the entire thing. If I try to trace out the plumbing for you, this will be a 20-minute video easily. But point is, after all that plumbing, here you have the valves. These allow you to change pitch, so you can press here, here, and here, right? Or you can press any combination of these 3 valves, right? And that allows you to change the pitch, so you can make the notes higher or lower. So I'm making the notes higher and lower by using these, right? And this is in fact a B flat French or double French horn as it called sometimes. And what that means is that B flat switchable. So what that means is there's a 4th key right about here. If I press that, I can transpose the instrument to the B flat range. So point being, these are the valves which I use to change the pitch. I make the notes higher and lower with this. And the air goes through all this plumbing, right? That comes out in the bell. The bell is this big thing right here. Comes out from here, it goes, the bell expands, and the sound comes out from here. Okay, now let's get into how the instrument makes sound. Now I've already basically talked about that part in general, where all brass instruments work where you buzz your lips, and that same sound I'm putting through a mouthpiece that already makes it slightly more attractive, like this. So it sounds slightly better. And when you allow that sound to resonate throughout the entire French horn, when you allow that and the sound to resonate throughout the entire, all the piping that's here in the French horn, you get the very mellow, very characteristic sound of the French horn. So it's still me buzzing my lips. It's that very same sound, but it's just resonating in all this piping. So yeah, that's all that's happening. You're not doing something magical to it. It's the same sound. It's just resonating through this piping and sounding much better when it comes out like this. So same sound. It's buzzing my lips, but it's now resonating. As for how these valves work, what I'm actually doing is I briefly go over how this works. So the principle of any wind instrument, brass or woodwind, is that if you make air travel through a short part of pipe, it is going to produce a high sound. Whereas if you make it travel a longer distance through a longer pipe, it's going to produce a lower sound. So longer the pipe, lower the sound, shorter the pipe, higher the sound. Now the way a French horn works is, and the way similar to the way the trumpet works, is except just lot longer tubing is required, so it's much more elaborate. What it's essentially doing is, when I press a key, I am making the air go through an extra amount of space. When I press this key, the air has to go through this extra amount of space, and that lowers the note slightly. Similarly, when I press this key, the air has to go through this amount of space, this extra amount of space where it was not going before. And similarly, when I press this key, it has to go through this extra amount of space. This is, when I play an open note, it means I don't play any valves. They are just going, all this stuff is not going through there. But when I press these valves, I make it go through some extra space, and that lowers the note. So just hear what it sounds like. So the note just got lower because I made it go some extra space. I can make it go even more. So I keep on making it going through extra space, making it go through more tubing, and let's keep making the note lower and lower. And that's the principle behind how the French horn works, how the most brass instruments work. But in particular, that's the French horn. So great, that was the French horn. One more good to know fact, if you want to know about the anatomy of the French horn, is that these keys work through nylon strings and twists here and valves, so like this. Just thought you might know. Anyway, that's it for the anatomy and how it produces a sound. Hopefully that was informative. And now we can move on to the sound of the French horn itself. Now, as you can see, this French horn has a very, very mellow tone. So once again, I'll play. What it has is a very, very mellow tone. It's a very, very soft sort of lyrical tone. Not very lyrical, but mellow tone. Now I can play sharply if I want to. I can play loudly and sharply. But it still retains that fact that it's mellow and that it's the tone quality is quite different from the rest of the brass instruments. If you watched my trumpet video, you heard how the trumpet sounds. It's very sharp. It's very decisive, very sharp, very loud. The French horn is much more nuanced. It's much more mellow, as I said. It's much more mellow. It's much more soft. It's much more. It's difficult to describe. But I don't need to describe it. I'm playing it for you exactly. So if you watch my trumpet video, you know how the trumpet sounds. The French horn has this very mellow quality to it. So. And it's that mellow quality that sets the French horn apart from the rest of the orchestra, and that's where I'm going to transition very neatly into the orchestra. So the French horn plays, as I said, in the alto range. Right, plays in the alto range. That means the middle pitches. It doesn't play too high. It doesn't play too low. It plays about in the middle, right? The middle pitches. And in terms of how it participates in the graded orchestra, as I said, the French horn is part of the brass section. So it will sometimes play as part of the brass section. And what it's doing is that most of the time it's accompanying the orchestra. It's helping the orchestra. And what it's doing is it's giving either harmonic or melodic accompaniment. That means it is either sort of harmonizing with the rest of the orchestra, playing some notes to support the rest of the orchestra, or it's playing another melody, but the melody is not. It's to help the main melody. It's not the main melody, right? So it sometimes supports the rest of the orchestra and it gives it power. Great. So the French horn is quite good at doing that. Then, however, a lot of passages in orchestra you'll find the French horn takes over. So it's only the French horn playing. These are short passages which you'll find. You look at Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 4, you look at Beethoven's Symphony No. 5, you'll always have the French horn taking over every now and then. And it plays that part of the melody. You take Beethoven's Fifth Symphony where it's ta 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 ta. That's played by the horns. The main theme of Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony is introduced by the horns. So the horns, the French horns, have a big role to play in the orchestra. So most of the time they're supporting, they're tying it together, they're making the sound of the orchestra more whole, more colorful, and adding this titular tone to that to the mix. But at times they also take over and they're the main melody. So you have some very beautiful melodies written for French horn by Mahler, by Beethoven, by Brahms also wrote quite a few. There's quite a few beautiful melodies written on French horn because French horn has that capacity to be very, very beautiful. Other brass instruments are much more harsh. So, for example, the trumpet is very harsh. The trumpet is very harsh. You can make it slightly soft, but its nature is very sharp. The tone is very sharp. The French horn is very mellow. It's soft. The texture is very soft, as I said, and that a lot of lyrical, beautiful melodies can be played in the French horn. So once again talking about the orchestra, as the French horn is kind of unique because of this mellow tone that it has. It sort of sets itself aside from the brass instrument. So it is a brass instrument, by all means, right? It is the alto brass instrument. It plays the middle parts in the brass section. We all know that, great. But it's slightly different, and some composers have then thus chose to group it with the woodwinds because of its melotone fits very well. It blends very well with the woodwinds. Even though it's by no means a woodwind instrument, a lot of composers sort of make it play with the woodwinds because they blend, they play so well together. It sounds so well together because both have very mellow, very lyrical sounds. And some composers make the French horn its own thing, where you have the brass with the trumpet and the trombone and the tuba, and then you have the woodwinds with the flute and the oboe, whatever, and you have the French horn. You have the horns. There's their own section, and they're doing their own thing, and that's actually quite new. You'd often find a lot of composers making the horns their own thing because they sound different from the brass, but different from the woodwind. They're not as mellow as the woodwind, but they're not as harsh as the brass, and they're kind of in the middle. And that's what I really love about the French horn. As I said, beautiful melodies on the French horn can be played, and that's quite amazing. Okay, so we've talked about the anatomy. We've talked about the fact that it's from the brass family. I've demonstrated, I played it for you. We've talked about the fact that it plays in the tenor range, it plays in the alto range. That means it plays in the middle pitch. It's not too high, it's not too low, it's in the middle. So now, finally, we talked about its orchestral role. Now, in terms of ensemble playing, brass ensemble playing, you'll have sometimes 4 French horns playing together. It's not too uncommon. 4 French horns playing together. A lot of people love to arrange for four French horns playing different parts. But you also have a brass ensemble where a French horn is also present in that brass ensemble, where you have a trumpet and a tuba and a French horn. So in ensemble or chamber music, brass chamber music is not that common. You don't see it all that much. But when it is there, French horns are usually part of it, and French horn once again a supporting role. So it plays a supporting role. Then when you have solo, French horn has quite a bit of solo music. As I said, French horn is most famous for in orchestras having their own solo melodies. So in an orchestra, during orchestral works like a symphony or a song or something like that, you will have the French horn will have amazing melodies within that orchestral section. Though not to say it doesn't have solo repertoire. So solo repertoire means music written only for the French horn. The French horn does have some repertoire like that, and there are concertos for French horn. There, if I'm not wrong, also sonatas for French horn, some more obscure pieces. But solo repertoire for French horn is not that common. It's not all that. There's not all that much repertoire for solo French horn, but it is there. That's my point. Anyways, that being said, that's what I really want to talk about for French horn. Now, from my personal experience, I am the principal French horn of the Lancers International School Orchestra, right? And so I'll talk about my experience with the French horn. I picked up the French horn because I've been playing the trumpet for 3 years, and then I saw the French horn, and this is a very interesting instrument, and I learned a lot about the French horn actually. So before I picked up the French horn, I learned quite a bit about the French horn, and that's why I felt like picking it up. So I ended up picking up the French horn due to the fact that I learned quite a bit about it. I was interested in it's got this melotone. I wonder what that sounds like. So I picked it up, right? And I was still playing trumpet, but I wanted to experiment with this, and I immediately loved the sound it produced. I was like, oh my god, it sounds amazing. And I got better, and I decided I'm going to switch to French horn. I'm going to play French horn only now. And that's what I did. And that's why I'm the principal French horn till date. So I just really love the sound so much. I really love the sound of the French horn. And I think you'll fall in love with it too if you listen to probably a better player than me play it for you. But yeah. And yeah, I think it has a very special role in the orchestra. French horn, I talked about this in my Anatomy of the Symphony Orchestra. If you haven't seen that video and you want to know a bit more about the French horns, feel free to see that video, and it will explain everything. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about the French horn. One last thing is, for those of you who are curious how you position the French horn, you place it, I said like this because I want to elevate it a bit, but you place it on a lap like this. You put one hand inside. This is to sort of block the sound to make it more mellow. If I play without the hand, so it makes the sound more mellow, more melodious. The flesh makes it more melodious, so like more mellow and more harmonic. So that's why we put the hand in there to sort of create the tone. We put our hand in there as well, so it's easier to hold as well. And we keep our left hand with the ring and the valves like this, and we put our mouth to the mouthpiece. We play like that. So those of you who are curious how you play the French horn. But that's about it for the French horn. I've done a quite long video on the French horn. This is because it's my instrument, so I felt like talking about it quite a bit. That being said, that's really all I wanted to talk about the French horn. Hope you learned something valuable. Hopefully you walked away from this video slightly more knowledgeable than you were before. And I will see you next time. I will be talking about another instrument. See you, and it's me wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.